Well, it's 10 o'clock, so I think we're ready to get started. We call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to the meeting. It's Tuesday, October 18th. I know this got moved because of the STAR meeting, so appreciate that. Just checking, is this too loud back there, or is this okay? Okay. Sounds loud. Okay. With that, if we can just do introductions, and here we go. Introductions, and Cheryl, we'll start with you.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Cheryl Murgo. I represent a planning region. I'm with the Houston-Galveston Area Council.
Good morning. My name is Scott Trebus. I work with Republic Services, and I'm representing a solid waste management organization of commercial operators.
I'm Risa Weinberger with Risa Weinberger Associates, which is environmental engineering, and I represent composters and environmental educators.
Good morning. I'm Steve Shannon. I represent a public recycling organization.
Good morning. My name is Richard McHale with the City of Austin, and I represent city and county solid waste agencies.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Meefield, North Texas Municipal Water District, and I represent public solid waste districts or authorities.
And I'm Dave Yankee, President of New Gen Strategy Solutions, and represent the financial community.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Rivette. I work for Waste Management, and I represent a professional with experience managing a commercial disposal facility.
Good morning. I'm Judge David Dillard. I'm representing counties under 10,000.
Good morning. I'm Jarita Sepulvedo, and I am the Waste Permits Division liaison for rulemaking, and I'm sitting in for Charlie Fritz today.
Good morning. Megan Hinson. I'm the section manager for Municipal Solid Waste Permit section.
And then my name is Savannah Rains. I'm filling in for Anna today, and I'll go ahead and I'll call the remaining council members that might be online. Tanel Atkins. Richard Abramowitz. Scott Pasternak.
Good morning. This is Scott Pasternak with Burns & McDonnell, and I represent the general public.
Frank Pugsley.
Good morning. Frank Pugsley with Park Hill, and I represent a professional engineer in private practice.
And then Jennifer Lutz. Okay, I will now go and pass the mic to our audience members.
Good morning. Good morning, Dave Greer, TCEQ External Relations Division.
Anja Chalice, TCQ West Permits Division, Business and Program Services Section.
Hi, Nikki Clark with MSW Permits Section.
Barbara Coombs, Environmental Benchmarking.
My name is Larry Lane. I'm with Texas Disposal System.
Okay, and then we have Maddie Howard and then Chance Robinson from MSW Permit Section helping us.
All right, thank you very much. Glad everyone's here. Jarita, I guess did I pronounce that correctly? All right, I had a good chance to butcher that, so I guess you're up.
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. And thank you for letting me step in today. I'm giving the division updates in Charlie's stead. So I'm going to start by speaking about Sunset. The Sunset Advisory Committee decision meeting was delayed until November 10th. The purpose of that meeting is for the committee to adopt their final recommendations to the legislature based on the committee's recommendation report and the public comments that were received. Waste Permits Division won't have any more information about the impacts to our agency or our division until that meeting takes place. So I don't have a lot of information for you this morning. Next topic is our electric vehicle battery reuse and recycling advisory group. That group kicked off this summer, and they've met monthly approximately in August and September. The group has been moving very quickly. You can see that the group member participants list is here in your packet. The group has shared some different presentations. One of the presentations was just about current recycling in the United States. And
apologies, I would like to let you know that Brimowitz is present.
So some of the current recycling policies in the United States and some of the products from a stakeholder group that was held in California. And we've also received some presentations on some of the proposed battery regulations in the EU. Both of those presentations are available on the Electric Vehicle Battery Recycling Advisory Group webpage, which is available to the public. So you all can go and check out some of those presentations. In the last meeting, the group began discussing possible legislative recommendations to encourage recycling of large format electric vehicle batteries. And currently, the final meeting for the group is scheduled for early December. There's some discussion about, future involvement, but for right now, this group is set to wrap up in December. And my final topic this morning is legislative session. The legislative session will unofficially begin with bill pre-filing on Monday, November 14th, and it will officially kick off Tuesday, January 10th, with the start of the 88th session.
Great. I'm going to open it up if anyone has questions. I've got a couple, so I'll just start off on the sunset review. Has there been a date set for that yet, that meeting?
My apologies if I missed that. It's November 10th.
Well, you might have said it and I missed it, so.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. I also wanted to tell you thank you for providing the EV listing. That at our last meeting we had asked for that because we were interested in that. And so I was looking at this when you had sent it out. It's got some big players on that list, and I think that's going to be really good. A question with that, it sounded like the meetings were not open to the public at this point. Is that envisioned to change at all? I think you said the next meeting was in December or what have you.
That's correct. So it is a named member group, so it's a closed group, and unfortunately, those are not open to the public. Now, we do have some public component, and that is that we maintain minutes, the agenda, notice of the meetings on the website that I mentioned.
Okay.
But no, they're not open to the public.
Okay, so we can get the minutes though, and they're posted on the TCEQ's website.
Yes.
Okay. Again, just, from our standpoint, and I'd shared this before, but I know for our energy practice, we're on the rate side, cost service. In other parts of the country, we're setting EV rates. I've shared this list with our practice lead in Denver. This is something they're very interested in because they're seeing these rates really take hold on the electric side, and not just California. They're doing it in the Carolinas and elsewhere. So this is, in my opinion, just going to become a bigger issue that we dispose of this, these materials properly. So I know there's a lot of interest from our standpoint, so I'll go look at the minutes. With that, anybody else have questions, comments?
Yeah, this is Rich Abramowitz. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just a question about, you said that there is potential legislation being looked at. What would be the process for bringing that forward by the group?
So right now we're exploring legislative recommendations, which is just a process that we have in the agency. there's also the potential for some of the group members to become involved. That was the intent of the group, was to just develop some legislative recommendations, but we don't necessarily have a specific path to getting it to the legislature at this point.
Okay, and one final question. When, if there is legislative recommendations, will those be shared with this group as well? Or will they just go public at the same time, I guess?
I expect they'll just be published on the website.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a quick question, and Rita, Megan, either one may want to answer. Yesterday, the agency sent out a notice about a new application form, public involvement plan for permit and registration applications. Thank you, perfect.
Set that one up perfect. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have one. It's just a comment about trying to get more properly manage these batteries. I'm aware of, and I can't be true, but I'm aware of a MRF here in Texas that experienced a fire last year. Their insurance is $12,000 last year. The latest quote, the best quote that they got after much diligence trying to find insurance carrier is $220,000 to cover the building. These insurance companies do not want to touch these things because of these fires. So anything that the state can do to help, properly manage these batteries and keep them out of the MSW recycling stream is going to have big impact.
Sorry, just a reminder to, when you're speaking, pull the mic in front of you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Not just you, everybody.
No, it's a good point. I saw that the Sunbright facility in Waco had a fire a couple weeks ago. So.
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's another one.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Megan, I guess you're up next, and you're going to give an update on the MSW Permits section.
Yeah, sure will. I figured might be a stranger to some of y'all, so introduce myself. My name is Megan Hinson. I started in this position on September 1st, so a few weeks in. Don't worry, got it all under control. I know everything. Chances on speed dial. But I graduated from Texas State with a degree in environmental and resource studies and came to work at TCEQ about 8 years ago. Started out in water, was there for 4 years in a grant program. Learned a lot, really loved it, but regulatory side is totally different. So I wanted to get my feet wet in there. May have seen me as a scrap tire work leader. So I came and gave presentations with y'all. And then moved on to the Business and Program Services section, which is also within Waste Permits Division. So I'm familiar with waste permits, and just really enjoying diving deeper into MSW world. And I have a great staff to work with, very knowledgeable. I feel so lucky that I have people I can turn to and go, oh, where is this in rule? And they can tell me, because it's, wow, 3:30 is long. But no, I've enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to working with y'all more. So enough about me. What's happening in the section is we currently have 3 vacancies, and we're working to fill those positions. We have an environmental permit specialist and 2 geoscientist positions open. So that's something we're working on. For major applications, we have 25 permits under review and 8 registrations. So things are moving pretty well in the section, even with those 3 vacancies. And I know we've brought post-closure care to y'all in the past. We are still working on that regulatory guidance, and we should have something to bring back to the group around January, in the January meeting. And then I think some very exciting news is we published the FY21 annual summary for MSW. This is available online, but it's also included in your packet. There's a lot of great data in there. I'm not going to get into all the numbers, but I think something that will stick out to everyone is that we did see an increase in the disposal rate in 2021. So it was up to 7.09 pounds per person per day. So there was about a 3.96% increase per capita. We do still have 55 years of remaining capacity statewide, and in the back there's the detail broken down per COG region. So really good resources there. Like I said, tons of data in there. I'm not going to get into all the details, but encourage you to read it. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. Happy to talk through it.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for the update. I'm going to look forward to, in January, the closure, post-closure, and I'll make a note of that, so we'll make sure that's on the agenda. So you think we'll have a presentation on that at that point?
We should have at least a draft. It's currently under review right now.
Sure.
Internal review.
Yeah.
So our goal is to get a draft guidance to y'all.
Okay. No, that'd be great, especially with my financial background. That's something I'm real curious to look at going forward. Also, thank you for providing the 2021 plan. I'll admit I never read them cover to cover, but I go through them and we use them a lot when we're doing work for our clients. It's a great resource, so I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. So thank you very much for that. It's a great document. So I'll open it up. Any questions, comments?
I do. I actually read these cover to cover. Hey, but if I had a question, who do I contact at the TCQ if I had a question about any of the information in the report? Is there a particular person?
Probably best to send it to MSWPER@tcq.texas.gov.
Okay, thank you.
Say that again.
MSWPER@tcq.texas.gov.
Megan, can you elaborate a little bit on the closure, post-closure? What exactly were y'all looking at, or what?
Sure.
What is the guidance that we can expect?
I can't speak to the specifics in the guidance just because I don't have it in front of me, and that has not come across my desk yet. But we do have, I believe Frank presented earlier this year and got your recommendations. And so it's putting some of those recommendations and looking through other areas and putting that in an actual RG regulatory guidance format. So as far as the specifics, I can't speak to that right now.
But it was based on the recommendations. Okay, thank you.
Frank's presentation was on building overflow sites, or was it in general?
I think he had two.
I'm sorry, it was supposed to be a YADA update with the presentation. Okay.
For the vacancies in your department, are any of those new positions since your fiscal year just began, or were they all existing positions?
One is new, the environmental permit specialist. So we've had the geoscientist positions open for a while now and tried to fill them a couple times, so we're still working on it.
Any other questions?
I have two more updates.
Oh, good.
We are gearing up for the FY22 annual report, so those reports are due November 10th of this year, and more information on how to submit a report is online. And then to Chuck's question on the new form, the public involvement plan. So this is, some of you may have received an email from TCQ's Gov Delivery yesterday about a new form. I don't know the form number off the top of my head, but it's public involvement plan. This form is part of TCEQ working towards Title VI compliance, and as part of that, we have an agency form that we're developing, but we also have an applicant form that just was published yesterday. So this form is required for new permits or registrations or new activities under existing permits or registrations. But there's a preliminary screening. There's 4 items in the preliminary screening that guide you. If you don't meet all 4 of those, you don't have to continue with the rest of the form. So if you do have to continue with the form, it's broken down on exactly what you need to complete. It's really getting getting the information so facilities know the communities that they're opening in, you know, getting the demographic information, stakeholder groups involved in the area. Also looking at some language access potential issues. So if we need publishing alternative language, which many, you know, our permits are already subject to, not all of our registrations are. So there are instructions that go along with the form. The instructions are broken down by media, so you'll see air, water, and waste. And then within waste, you'll see MSW, IHW, scrap tires, radioactive materials. So we do have it broken down that way, looking at what is considered a new activity, what is considered significant public interest. That is laid out a little bit clearer in the instructions, just because between the different media and the different application types, it may not always be uniform. So that is for new applications or, again, new activities coming in after November 1st. And if you don't meet all four criteria of the public screening, you would still submit the form that shows you didn't meet all four criteria. That way we know that you've completed it, at least the first step. And then, but again, if you do meet those, then you would continue with the rest of the form.
So I had a couple of administrative questions on this. If we, how do we submit this? If we have a new application coming in, is it part of the Part 1 or is it separate?
Submit it with your initial submittal. So submit it as an attachment.
In Part 1, Part 2?
It's a separate, yeah, I guess in Part 1, it's a separate document. It'll be a part of the application packet, essentially, but...
It would probably fit into Part 1, but you may want to just circle the wagon with your team. You can go anywhere you want to. We can put it in the back and front, but we need a little guidance. Also on the demographic information, there's some links to EPA Environmental Justice Screen, but there's no guidance on distance from facility. Half mile, 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, entire county, east half of the state, west half of the state. So what do we use for guidance on that?
That is a very good question and something that the work group was having a hard time determining because this form is used for river basins as well as, small individual facilities. It may be in the instructions for waste, but...
It may be.
Okay.
It came out yesterday afternoon. I read it very fast. I couldn't find it. That's why I brought the question.
Okay.
And it may very well be buried in there somewhere.
I'll follow up on that and get back with y'all.
Yeah. If there's not any hard guidance that's part of, I guess there's a letter of agreement between TCEQ and the EPA over Title VI issues. If there's not anything hard to find there, I'll just throw out there, you use this, your department uses 1 mile radius often. And just for consistency, that may be a good starting point.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a thought. Okay.
Yeah, that came up actually a couple of times.
You use a 1/4 mile and a mile. 1/4 mile for notice and a 1 mile for affected parties.
Okay.
So.
And there may be some limitations within EJ Screen, because it may say census tract, now that I'm thinking of it. But
it's a tough screen. You do have you can put variable distances.
Okay.
It's, of course, in the metric, so you kind of use kilometers. And it comes from a single geographic point. So if you have a 700-acre facility, it becomes quite interesting as to where that geographic point is.
Sure.
But that is what it is. Okay, well, any additional guidance? November 1 is screaming at us. So,
and if you submit an application and leave this out, we're not going to, shut everything down and get on the phone and start screaming at you. We'll just say, can you fill this out and submit it to us? So we'll continue our review.
Okay. And then just for everyone else's interest in this report, and it's just came out, and again, I didn't have a chance to read it real quick, but I think there's a new section on recovering landfill gas for beneficial use, where you actually present the amount of gas processed, how much of it is shipped off-site. I don't remember seeing that before.
No, I don't use
I know it was in last year's, but I don't recall if it was prior.
Okay. I know. Well, that's good. I didn't realize. I know it listed the facilities, but in this case, it's actually listing the amount of standard cubic foot processed gas here. Anyhow, it's a nice add if it's or continuation, as Jeff said. So, and that was just it. I want to point that out. Thank you.
I guess I should be reading it cover to cover, so I picked that up. Cheryl probably knew that.
Just a reminder to please speak into the mic.
Okay. Well, that was just self-deprecating, so I won't repeat myself. Okay. Megan, anything else?
That's it. But if you'd like any other types of updates for me to bring, just let me know, and I'll get them ready for next time.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. So next on the agenda, and we're a few minutes ahead of plan, there was going to be an update on the regional solid waste management plans, as well as the MSWRRAC nomination update.
Jessica couldn't be here today, so I'm giving update on both regional solid waste management plans and MSWRRAC nomination request. My name is Anju Talis. I'm from West Permits Division, Business and Program Services section. On regional plans, we received all 24 draft plans. Currently, 12 plans have been through final reviews in the preparation for adoption, and other 12 are going through final 12 have been through final reviews, and 12 are going through final reviews right now. In accordance with Texas Health and Safety Code Section 363.062F, TCEQ must adopt the regional solid waste management plans by rule. The plans will be added to 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 330.647. This process is underway. And we are expecting to propose a rule at a commissioner's agenda meeting on February 2023. And then we have final adoption and approval of the plans in July 2023. The rulemaking process will include a public comment period and public hearing anticipated to happen sometime in March 2023. That's all for regional plans. And for MSWRRAC nomination request, we're still accepting application for 4 available vacancies, and all the vacancies are for elected officials positions. We received few applications, but not for all 4 positions. We changed the process for accepting nomination this year, and now we're accepting application throughout the year. Vacancies are open until filled by a qualified candidate. Application for advisory council positions should complete and submit the advisory council application and related materials. The application form, list of vacancies, and additional information are available in our MSWRRAC website. Application and nominees will be evaluated based upon the application material submitted, letter of reference, and solid waste management experience. Appointment will be made by TCEQ commissioners at an agenda meeting once nominations are reviewed and approved. The website will be updated with the names of new members after the appointments are approved. We published notice of application and available vacancies in Texas Register on August 19th. Information on vacancies was also shared through Golf Delivery and listserv, through agency social media accounts and TARC meetings and various other outlets. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Question, and I don't know if you can say which ones you may have not received anything for, but have you received any applications for, I believe it's an elected official from a city, over 750,000 or something like that?
We have received application for a position with a population less than 150,000. And then it's the same position. We received 2 applications for same position, and one might not be eligible, which is less than 75,000.
So I'm sorry, so you did get an application,
It's we received 3 applications, 2 for same position, which is population less than 150,000.
Right.
And 1, we received application for population between 100,000 or more, but less than 750,000, but it might not be.
So the 750,000 and greater is?
Councilman Atkins.
Okay. It is filled.
Pardon? Yeah, I believe it's Councilman Atkins, right, from Dallas?
Okay. Well, and no, that's great, because I know we've had problems sometimes filling some of these elected official positions. I know there was a discussion at one point about whether we could have someone like a public works director from the city of Houston or San Antonio or something like that. But I know there were some that has to go through a legislative process change, which is not easy. But has there ever been any more discussion about that?
We are still exploring that option and looking into what the legislative change could be.
Okay.
And yes, confirming Tanel Atkins is population over 750,000.
No, it's not over 700.
So the
position open was for population between 100,000 or more, but less than 750.
Right. But then the one is filled for, you're right, you have a better memory than I. So I will ask the advisory council here, what are your thoughts of having someone that's not elected potentially, and is that something we want to work at trying to get changed so the board's full?
You know, I don't know that we need to change. I think perhaps if any change, maybe a change in the length of the term, because you're talking 6 years for elected officials, it's like a lifetime. So maybe we're able to have a shorter term for members.
Anyone else? Okay. Sounds like people are happy with how it is, other than maybe shorter terms. So, but that would require a legislative change too. So, okay.
Well, if either one would require a legislative change, I mean, I would be open to the idea of having a non-elected official, like, for example, a public works director representing a larger city. I think it's important to have larger cities represented, certainly. So if the shorter term doesn't attract people, and unfortunately we won't know until that legislative change is made, if that shorter term doesn't attract an elected official, I would still rather see a non-elected official, whether it's a shorter term or a longer term. I wonder whether we could do an either or.
I was just thinking either or, so.
Well, I mean, the position I'm in right now is a city or county representative, so I don't know. I mean, I think technically I would say a city or county solid waste agency, so I don't know how different having a public works director would be from my position.
So if that's something, is that something that, looking at the positions, is that something that actually is on the radar for TCEQ to consider
in the
legislative session?
Yeah, and there's been years of evidence that those positions are hard to fill initially and keep filled, so we are looking into that.
Okay, so...
Is the position open, I'm sorry, David, is the position open only to cities, or are counties included as well?
I think it depends on the language.
Yeah.
The language says an elected official from a municipality.
I think there's some that say county, there's some that say municipality.
And then position 5 is 2 elected officials of separate counties. One of them. So.
And honestly, for those larger ones, just in my opinion, counties are not as active in solid waste. I'd rather have someone from the city. So we're ahead of plans. I'm not Go ahead, Richard.
No, I'm just saying I agree for the larger ones. Yes.
Okay. So we're ahead of plan. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but I am trying to clarify the positions, and you've got it there, Chuck. The ones we have the hardest time filling are for the elected officials from the larger entities. So the cities that are 100, municipality that's 100 to 750,000 and 750,000 and greater. And Richard, maybe I misunderstood you, but both of those are elected officials, right, Chuck?
Yes.
So if we're looking at wording changes, and again, if you're looking at that, and Teresa's point, honestly, with the turnover of elected officials, I would wonder if we should be looking at this being an elected official or someone with solid waste experience from those cities. And I'll open it up, but I think there's some benefit to having someone from a Dallas, a Houston, San Antonio, Austin, what have you, that can speak to it. I'm just opening it up.
What do you think about an elected official? And if it's an elected official, a term of, let's say, 2 years, something less than 6 years, or a non-elected official from that size city for the 6-year term? Is that too convoluted? It's pretty weird.
Well, yeah, it's kind of convoluted. Here's my point. And Richard, you make a good point. Risa, you do too. But bottom line, if they don't get reelected, it's a moot point, and they're off. That we've seen that happen. So I would probably try to keep it simpler, and I personally would like to have that option of an elected official or someone from the city with experience.
All right, I agree. That makes sense.
So, David, one of the things we talked about many, many, many years ago in this regard is that it would stay as an elected official, but the elected official would have the ability to designate a representative to sit in the meeting for them. So the thought would be is it would be a mayor, and the mayor would designate someone to sit in on their behalf. And then if for whatever reason the mayor lost their position, then you'd have to flip it and go from there. But the thought was we would get better participation with that, and it would require less word changing on a legislative document, which is, as Steve knows, the fewer words, the better. The change.
Well, that's a good point. And if we were to do that, one of the things we'd probably want to do is reach out, whether it's through TARC or Tex One or some of these other entities, because it may not get on the mayor's radar, but when there are vacancies like this, to reach out, say, to the solid waste director for the city of Houston or Dallas or San Antonio, what have you, to push it that way. So folks open to that, what Chuck mentioned with the mayor? Okay. So what can we do to try to get that? That shouldn't be too hard, should it? It doesn't, I'm saying legislation shouldn't be too hard, so that was an inconsistent statement, so.
Well, you said it.
Yeah.
We have looked into designating proxies. I don't remember the conclusion of those meetings or those conversations, so I'll revisit that and see what we're still talking about. Okay. Because we do understand that it's a challenge for elected officials, and we want to keep people in the council and participating. So, but we'll circle back on those conversations.
A potential point I wanted to make was that I don't know in the version that Chuck has if it makes reference to when either the legislation was written or perhaps last updated, but I think these elected officials have been in place since probably before Subtitle D went into effect. And it was probably, I'm speculating, but I'm assuming they had a number of elected officials in there because at that time, the vast majority of the landfills were owned by municipalities. And that's kind of flipped now. At least there's a significant reduction. And so in that respect, it's kind of outdated.
Is it possible, we were just looking at it, and Chuck, if you want to read it off or what have you, there appear to be 4 municipal positions for elected officials. Does it make sense? Could we look at some potential, if you could check internally and then for our January meeting, potentially have some proposed language or, you know, where TCEQ stands. By then we're into the session. I don't know when you have to get everything, you know, taken care of legislatively there, but this is just one tweak. I wonder if we would consider it for all 4 of the elected positions, the above 750,000, the 100 to 750, above 100 and above 25,000, right?
One of the other things we talked about a very long time ago was allowing an elected official that had a position here to send a proxy to the meeting on their behalf. That proxy would not be able to vote, but we vote on almost very few things, let's just say that. And if we were voting on something, then the elected official would have to be here themselves in order to vote. But the last couple of votes we've actually done by email anyhow.
Yep.
And that way, the municipality, I mean, it's a two-way street. We want to get the input from the large cities or all the range of cities, municipalities, but we want them to also know what's going on. And, and so if they can send a proxy that would be able to listen and report back, even though they may not have any voting rights, that would, at the time, and this is a long time ago, we didn't think that would require legislative change. That would just require probably the commissioners to, or even the ED, to just approve, whatever you want to call it, procedural change, right? So.
Yeah, we'll check it back on those conversations and see where we landed.
You know, I'm not sure what the format's going to be going forward, if we're going to continue to have these hybrid meetings, but it may be easier now, if we are, for elected officials to attend in that manner and be able to just, participate from their municipality or their county or wherever they're from. And so there may be a little bit more willingness on their part to be involved with this organization or this group.
So just to close this topic, and I know we're only advisory, but yeah, if you could check internally, chatting with Charlie or whoever the appropriate parties are, and Chuck made a really good point there, if this is something that could be done by the executive director or the commissioners to tweak that language, again, if you could just give us an update at the January meeting where that stands, and I'll make a note. I've made a note of that for that meeting as well. Just to get better participation. This is all about public information, and that's a good thing. So, okay, thank you very much. Any other?
Hey, David,
go ahead.
David, just to answer. Sorry, I can't tell if I'm interrupting or not. So. But just to answer your question, the last time that the act was amended for the membership was 1997, it looks like. So it's been a long time.
Thank you. Risa, were you going to say something? Oh, okay. All right. Any other comments before we move on? Cheryl.
Just thank you to the TCQ staff, Santos, Jessica, and Anya. You guys have been very helpful with the COGS, and at the last TARC meeting, we appreciated everything. So thank you. You've made this an easy process.
Good. Thank you. Okay. If there's not anything else, the next item was the MSWRRAC resolution that we had put forth a while back, if everyone can remember that. We put the resolution together, and then I presented a brief little presentation support for that. I guess that was in August at the commissioners meeting. The understanding of it, and you folks can correct me if I'm wrong, was basically they agree with it, they support it, but they have more pressing issues, most importantly, and they said it on the record, was, TCEQ, the salaries for employees, that is a big issue for them, rightfully so, if they're going to retain staff. So that tends to be, it looks like, their bigger issue during the upcoming legislative session. So did not see any movement on the MSWRRAC resolution. If I misspoke on anything there, you want to correct me or give me an update?
I think you summarized that correctly.
All right. So, any comments? Okay. Hearing none, the next item up was the Municipal Solid Waste Recycling Stakeholder Advisory Group update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, the Recycling Advisory and Stakeholder Group was put together to provide feedback, suggestions on potential rule improvements to our Chapter 328 recycling rules. The group has representation from industry, from legislative offices, trade associations, and other local governmental entities. We had one meeting back in July. We got lots of feedback. There was lots of discussion. We are currently evaluating the feedback that we did get. We also sent out after that meeting to all of the advisory stakeholder group members the points of discussion for additional comments for those who couldn't make it. So yeah, now we are evaluating all of the comments that we received, and we are thinking of having our next meeting potentially in early 2023. Any questions?
I have just a couple, and not asking you to go from memory or what have you, but do you remember what the primary topics they were discussing generally?
We talked about fire plans was a big one. I can't remember.
That's
honestly,
fine.
Off the top of my head, but lots of good discussions.
So that's more on the municipal side. I guess one of my questions, going back to the market development study that was developed by TCEQ Star in conjunction with Burns McDonnell, any discussion on that or discussions there with, okay.
No, this is separate from that.
Okay.
One of the other topics that we did talk about was closure plans and cost estimates for financial assurance and closure plans.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, is it strictly recycling or does it touch on organics at all?
So some of our composters are subject to our recycling rules, so it would extend to them.
Okay. I'm going to bring up one other topic tied to the organic side is with PFAS. That's in the paper a lot. It's in the trade journals. It's in everything from trade journals to the Wall Street Journal to the local newspaper, and the potential impact of the biosolids and with that on the composting. So is there any discussion? Is that getting on the radar?
It's not just composting, it's also biosolids in landfills.
Right.
Because the implications could be huge. If you don't mind me interrupting
go for it.
here, I participated in an EPA workshop on the designation of PFAS and PFOA as hazardous substances under CERCLA. And when I listened to that conversation, the presentation was all, this was from EPA, was all about, it's not a big deal. It's the liability is only if there's a Superfund designation, a Superfund site designation, and you can trace the liability back from that Superfund site. So I thought, okay, the chances of that aren't going to be, great. The chances of that happening aren't going to be so tremendous. And then a couple of days ago, I was enlightened, surprised, and I shouldn't have been, to learn that the Texas rules tie back to the CERCLA designation of hazardous substances, and that's where we could get in big trouble in Texas, where we could have biosolids or leachate designated as hazardous waste because of the CERCLA designation that is almost certainly going to go through. And that just about took my breath away when I realized that, because everybody, I mean, it's everywhere, okay? It's in the water, it's in our blood, it's in our leachate, it's in our sludge, it's everywhere. And if EPA designates those, quote, forever chemicals as hazardous substances, then I would really love somebody to explain to me in detail the implications through the Texas rules and what that could potentially do to the landfills and the composters.
Yeah.
Because it's a no-win situation for both.
Yeah. So just so you know, I was at a Texas Water Conservation Association, TWCA, conference in San Antonio. I guess it was a week before last. And they had a presentation on the PFAS. And again, they're focused on it from the wastewater side and the biosolids. And had an excellent presentation by a PhD that's been focusing on this, working with Texas Water Development Board on it. It was a fascinating and deeply concerning presentation, and the EPA is going through, and I get some of it wrong, but the details, they're looking at their rules right now. Apparently they're looking at potential standards they're looking at standards that are out there that even current labs
they're below non-detect limits.
Yeah, and you're probably seeing it with you guys know it in spades at North Texas, but it's going to ripple through, but it's starting with the biosolids. It'll ripple through, you're right, for the landfills. I've heard from a couple landfill clients, they're concerned they could be a hazardous waste site. So, yeah, it's going to hit the landfills. It's going to hit the compost, it's going to hit land application, all of those items, and it's just unfortunately something we're going to see a lot more of. So, sorry, I think I just went down a rabbit hole there, but yeah, it's a big issue we need to be aware of. It's going to be, I think we're going to be talking about it a lot more because the ramifications are huge on the biosolids. I remember one of the studies we did, for HGAC on the waste generation, and, just on biosolids, I think 300,000-400,000 tons a year go into landfills, and a lot's land applied, not different than any other region. And what are you going to do with that now?
It's not just biosolids. If you look at, landfills and leachate aside, okay, if you look at composting, it's in the water that we put in our composting processes and potentially in the plants that we put in our composting. And do we really want to shut down that industry? Not to mention, do we want to shut down our landfills or make them all hazardous waste landfills? I don't think so.
Risa, I've heard that potentially would also negate the ability for composters to sell their product as organic. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. There would be no such thing as organic compost, which would, the next implication of that would be that, so how do you have an organic agriculture sector if there's no compost that you can use? You're not going to use chemical fertilizer. So if you can't use compost as an amendment either, there went the organic agriculture sector too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so, because we're seeing it on the water treatment side, the wastewater, and then, solid waste. So anyhow, there's some good news for you today. Okay. Any other questions?
I had a quick one for Nikki. Thank you for the highlights of the meeting. The additional questions or comments that you got from the stakeholders group, will that be made available as well, or are you going to keep that for a while?
Do you mean the ones that we mailed out?
Yeah.
It was exactly the same discussion that we had in the meeting, and it was, I don't think it's on this sheet. That was for it's a closed stakeholder group, so
Okay,
the
that's what I was
specifics,
asking.
yeah.
Okay.
I would like to note, though, just a reminder that there is a public website for that group where we have minutes and agendas and, scheduled meetings, although we don't have a meeting scheduled just yet. But and if you haven't had a chance to visit your MSWRRAC webpage, the solid waste advisory groups are all grouped together on the public website. The EV battery group, this group, and MSWRRAC, of course, is all stored there. So if you're interested in looking at some of the documentation of those meetings.
Great. Oh, thank you for that. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Well, even with going down the PFAS rabbit hole, we are 30 minutes ahead of time on our schedule. The final item was going through the approval of the minutes from our July 14th meeting. If you want to take a couple minutes to review them, I've reviewed them. They look good. And if someone would like to, once you've looked at it, whoever would like to make a motion to accept them.
Move to approve.
Okay. Got a first, a motion to accept them. Second from Scott. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So those are approved. The other key item is going through and proposing our meeting dates for 2023. I've taken a look at my calendar and updating upcoming conferences. Don't see a conflict with Texwana. Should not be an issue with STAR. I'll open it up to, the dates and let's see, I think, Megan, are you kind of discussing these? The dates?
I had not planned on it,
Okay.
but we can.
Well,
We're looking at January 12th, 2023, April 13th, 2023, July 13th, and October 12th.
What day of the week is that?
Thursday.
Thursdays.
All Thursday.
Have you folks?
Plan to keep them hybrid?
Yes. Seems to be working well for everyone. We've got the tech side figured out now, so if the council's in favor of that, then yes.
I'll wait a couple more minutes. I see everybody scanning their iPhones.
So just for ease, that's the second Thursday of every third month, right?
That's what it looks like. Yes.
I guess you have to determine whether or not the room's available on those dates also, right?
I believe so, but it's a Thursday, so we shouldn't have conflicts with agenda, and if we do...
That's why we've been on Thursdays for years.
Right.
For that very reason.
Yeah.
But every now and then.
Every so often, yeah.
We have an issue, yeah.
And we'd know that in advance if we needed to move the date.
All right. Those dates good for everybody? I see all the iPhones down. Well, Risa and Scott are still scanning, so.
I did get confirmation we have this room reserved on these dates.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Richard, anybody else, are you guys good with those dates that are online?
Looks good, Dave. This is Frank.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Rich.
Yeah,
They look good.
Yeah, same here for Scott. So thanks for asking.
Okay, you bet. Looks like we're just down to Risa now. Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, let's go ahead and move with those dates. If everybody put them on your calendars, whether it's your phone, your daytime, or both. Great. Action items, Q&A. The only action items I have going forward, we'll, for the next meeting, talk about closure, post-closure, and these advisory council meetings. I did have a couple closing remarks, but I will do those after we take any input from the public. So if the public if there's anyone in the public that wanted to speak. Yeah, hit the button, make sure it's green, bright green. There you go.
Green. Oh, it's more green. Okay, thank you. That's much better. Again, I'd like to get a list of the emails so I wouldn't have to always... the last time I came and shared some information about using garbage per capita as a metric for measuring diversion, after the meeting, this is a nod to Mr. Shannon, who remarked, holy cow, or thunderation, I can't believe Richardson could reduce their waste by 15% in 2 years. And I thought, you know, there are only two numbers when you're measuring garbage per capita. It's population and tons of the tonnage. The data on tonnage is rock solid from the North Texas Municipal Water District, but the population can be squishy depending on their different websites you can refer to. So given Mr. Shannon's response, I thought I need to make that population number rock solid, and I called every planning department for each of these 5 cities, and I asked them what number they refer to, and I have copies for you. McKinney and Frisco use their own website, and then Plano and Richardson use the Central Texas Council of Governments. So I need to reset my diversion garbage per capita number, and I have the 3 years. Could I have someone give this to each person? Thank you. And if you don't, I have more. Please get it. Okay. Well.
Can we also have your name?
My name is, who's asking? Where's that?
Yeah, if you can, I should have done that. I apologize. If you can just, for the record, put your name, state your name.
Barbara Coombs. I have a little company called Environmental Benchmarking, but just for the record, there was discussion about nominations. I have applied for this committee for at least twice, maybe 3 times, and worked for a city over the size of 500,000 as a recycling coordinator, getting them to an 64% recycling rate. I am familiar with what cities are wanting to do to get, did everybody get a copy of this? Okay. To reduce their garbage per capita. Oh, I need to share. Our garbage per capita has gone up in the state of Texas. It was 6.8, now it's 7.09. Again, thank you for this. There are 3 councils of government that if you were to just ask them why is your garbage per capita over 10 pounds per person per day, you may get the whole state of Texas to come down. But those, I know why Heart of Texas is 12.5. It's, again, Itasca is allocating all their tonnage to Heart of Texas when they're pulling from 14 different counties, including Hayes and Dallas. So you wouldn't even have to regulate garbage per capita if you could get the data to those councils of government very accurate. Then you just take a percentage of the population of that city to that council of government, and you've got a garbage per capita number for that city. But if it's going to be not accurately allocated, your numbers are not going to come out. What I'd like to refer you to, if you don't mind looking at the last page of this. Has everybody got a copy? I didn't think I had enough. Okay, great. The last page, if you notice, McKinney was going, their garbage per capita went back up to 4.59. And I was thinking about McKinney. I have relatives in McKinney, and it's one of the fastest growing cities in North Texas. And they're probably just struggling with, the amount of construction. They can't build houses fast enough. And I keep thinking, one of your greatest ways to reduce your waste, and what Frisco has caught on to, is C&D. And if there's a way to get C&D, that knowledge base, I would encourage you to possibly find someone who would do a study on what C&D recyclers are doing in Texas and what the best practices are, and how to disseminate that information to cities, because I think they could all get like Frisco and Allen more if they could capture that C&D and divert it from the landfill. What Frisco has done is they've made it cheaper to recycle C&D than to landfill. So I just, again, wanted to thank Steve for encouraging me to make those population numbers solid, so I have a baseline that's strong going forward. And thank you. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else from the public that wants to speak? Okay.
If there's anybody who's called in, you can press *5 on your phone to raise your hand, just in case.
Sure.
All right. Does not look like there's anybody raising their hand online, so we're good.
Great. Thank you. It's not really a public comment, closing remarks. I think it fits in here. And anybody else that wanted to chime in that attended, we did have the STAR meeting conference last week, Wednesday through Friday. I attended it. I know that's why we moved the MSWRRAC meeting. So thank you for all those that agreed to that about 6 or 8 months ago. But the STAR meeting, just to give you an update, or the STAR conference, I thought went very well. A number of you were there. I think we had an attendance of about 180 or so. Good set of group of exhibitors, speakers, networking. So I really enjoyed my time there. We had a good time. Anyone else that attended that's got comments or want to share anything, feel free.
Yes, thank you, Dave, and I appreciate it. The STAR membership appreciates the accommodation by arranging a different meeting time. Probably should have mentioned this when you were talking about the on the agenda about the resolution. What I recall from the testimony that we gave to the commission the day of that they were considering the resolution was the agency's in a severe financial situation. The agency self-evaluation report, 600 and some odd pages, didn't even address the issue of solid waste management other than we're out of money. The agency, the commissioners at that meeting were supportive as much as they could be, and each of them encouraged the development of supportive legislation specific to move forward the recommendations of the recycling market development plan. And that was our big takeaway, I think, from that meeting. They'd like to help, but they can't right now because they don't have any money, but give us some legislation that gives us the opportunity to specifically move this forward. STAR, in cooperation with many other stakeholders and organizations, have been trying to grind our way through this and come up with recommended legislation. We, at the STAR meeting last week, the Business Council with many members sat down and evaluated again this draft legislation. There were some good recommendations made. Essentially, we have been trying for 11 years to get to this point where we monetize the value of the recycling industry. And the plan shows that it has a $7.8 billion annual impact on the state's economy, that the industry is paying just collection and processing and transport to end-use market, paying $250 million in state and local taxes here, that there are more than 31,000 Texans employed in that industry, which is the same number as in the petroleum refining industry. We don't want to see this die. We want to see it continue in spite of the obstacles that we may be facing. We have some legislators that are very interested in this, that have been pushing for this for years, also supportive of this. The fact that the state, we spent $2 million putting this plan together. It's an outstanding plan. It's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much involved in it. But our strategy at this point is, one, we will distribute this document, our draft, to all of you members here, ask for your input back by the middle of next week. Our intention will be to try to file this as early as possible. Generally speaking, we're looking for a $9 million a year appropriation from the 5,000 fund. There was much discussion about maybe taking the landfill tip fee surcharge back to $1.25 or something like that. The stakeholders that we've talked to don't want to do that. There's $125 million sitting there. We assert that investing part of that money in an industry that, of its own volition, has achieved a $7.8 billion annual impact on the state's economy. That money will yield more benefit to the state than whatever interest is being garnered by having that money just sit there in the state budget, is our feeling. The money is there. So our approach is to take the money that's there. Now, meantime, there's still $33 million a year coming in from the landfill tip fee surcharge. There was some discussion or concern that, well, gosh, if we recycle, that means there's going to be less landfill tons, less tons to apply this fee upon, and gosh, that might threaten that money. Not when you take population growth into consideration. The state itself predicts a 59% population growth by 2050. That's another 19 million people, which equates to about another 19 million tons of MSW per capita in that case. So we're going to give it our best shot, but what this is generally, it's to put $1.5 million into TCEQ for staffing, to focus on the market development plan, that the TCEQ would solicit and create a 17 to 20 member recycling market development board made up of people in the recycling industry, the supply and demand chain of recyclables. There was some discussion about just having the MSWRRAC, changing the MSWRRAC's mission to focus on this. And the feeling was that the MSWRRAC is seated to look at solid waste in general and in total, whereas recycling is just a piece of that. We're going to be asking for the Recycling Market Development Board to be created within 9 months of the legislation, and that within 2 years that board would create a market development center through an RFP process at one of the state universities. There's money in here for the councils of governments to do education and awareness. There's money in here for TCEQ to do education and awareness. We're not trying to define what everything needs to be done right now. That's really not trying to kick the can down the road, but that's the purpose of the board, to decide where they want research and development done, or they want grant monies applied to, and so forth. One of the things that we've also put in here is that if there are grants, loans, bridge loans, etc., to projects to help develop infrastructure, that the private sector be equally, the private sector and the public sector can go after that money. Right now, the way these grants through the COGS are, technically the private sector could be a recipient of that money, but it's too much rigmarole. Nobody's ever done it. And the fact of the matter is, in these developments, sometimes it's the private sector that needs the money, not the public sector. The public sector may come to the project with property and a building or whatever, and they've got their half of the deal covered. It may be the private sector that needs the money. So just generally speaking, that's where we're coming from. We want to see something done. The fact of the matter is that Texas has 10% of all the municipal solid waste in this nation. And Texas is not really doing anything to try to help promote this. Meanwhile, industry is investing in infrastructure and end-use manufacturing facilities and creating jobs in South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and even Kentucky, where I'm from. Texas is doing nothing to try to reach out and make this happen. So we're hopeful that we can get support of the stakeholders. We intend to strive forward and make this happen. We appreciate very much the support of this body that passed the resolution and appealed to the commission for their support. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to move this forward, and by getting the money into places that can, where it can do some good. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Mr. President, if you have any comment or question for me, please let me know.
Well, as far as next steps then, so what you're going to do is send out this draft bill, or does everybody have one here now?
No, not yet.
Okay. So you gave it to me, but if you distribute it to everybody and you want to get comments back by, say, the end of next week?
Well, next week, yes, sir.
End of next week probably be better.
Well, end of next week.
Yeah,
right. Well,
around.
Yeah, the fact that the bills don't get filed until, what, the 14th, November? So that gives us a little bit more wiggle room than what we thought. So, yeah, end of next week will be fine. We appreciate your candid comments.
So you'll send that out today or tomorrow to everyone?
Yes, sir.
And I think it'd be nice if you could send it in a Word document, track changes if people want to do that. Not that I'd expect a lot, but I think that's always easier and better way to incorporate. Of course, you'd have to consolidate them. The next steps after that, we give comments back to you, but then is it really your thought that the Star Business Council will be driving this process and trying to get before legislators during the session?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. And we've got a lot of people that are interested, you know, but we've to try to get this thing filtered down. Gosh, this thing has gone through umpteen iterations to try to reflect input that we've had from different stakeholders, not trying to step on anybody's toes too bad one way or the other. But, it's interesting. For the most part, the intent of the document that we intend to file, or try to file, is so reflective of the legislation and the laws and the statutes that we've had in place for 33 years in this state. The same challenges, the same needs, the same opportunities. If Texas had followed through with the recycling provisions of the Solid Waste Act that they passed in '89, Texas would be leading the nation in recycling. And so we, better late than never is our feeling. And now is the time. So it's the intent of the Business Council to lead this effort or walk in lockstep with whoever else wants to help promote this.
Okay, well, I'll just close with, I know when I presented in August, the commissioners had some good questions. I mean, they had a lot of interest. I think one of the commissioners was a little jealous when I mentioned what everything South Carolina was doing to encourage it in some new areas. But, well, let me know what I can do while you move through that process. I'll be glad to help, Steve.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that or any other public comments from the advisory council or anyone else? Okay. With that said, the next meeting, it looks like it'll be January 12th. If there aren't any other comments, if I could have a motion to close the meeting.
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
All right. Second?
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for everyone's time.